The Knowledge of London has just introduced a fixed set of 6,000 points. Does this make the Knowledge of London easier? Well, stay tuned, because I think this is a very good move. And I'm even going to test some of these points to see if they're really up to scratch with a working cab driver. So what is the news? Well, for a little while now, it's been rumoured that the Knowledge of London would be condensed down to a fixed number of points of interest. A point of interest is just something that an examiner or a passenger would ask you as a cab driver. Take me to this pub, take me to House of Parliament, etc. This kind of goes against the whole prestige of the knowledge, because if you look at any articles online, it's always been, oh, London cab drivers have to learn all of London, or they have to learn 25,000 streets and roads. Well, firstly, I have to clear something up. London cab drivers have never learned 25,000 streets and roads. And I don't know when this exact number came about, but it's one of those things that got published at some point in time by some newspaper or article, journal, whatever, and it's just been repeated again and again and again. Where this number likely came from, and I'm going to credit Dean from Wizan Knowledge School for kind of getting to the bottom of this, the original A to Z map of London had about 25,000 streets and roads in it. And now that A to Z covers a far greater area than what we ever learn on the knowledge. It's the Greater London area, the ULEZ zone, like all of Greater London and the suburbs, which we only learn still quite a large part, but a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross. So the number never was 25,000. The knowledge was, and still is, with this new points list, a mammoth task. To give you some idea, I finished the Knowledge of London on about 7,000 points of interest. How it worked when I was on the knowledge, and generally how it's always worked, is that the examiner could ask you anywhere.
It's your mother what asks you the ones you eat. Them sadists up the road ask you the ones you don't.
My study was being directed by the examiners and TfL anyway, because it was up to those examiners to kind of set the curriculum based upon what points they asked. Now, the examiners are actually licensed London taxi drivers. Some of them still drive a cab, some of them used to drive a cab, but they kind of talk with each other and presumably would pick up points of interest from one another or cab driver colleagues to know what is kind of relevant, what to ask, amongst obviously all the big bread and butter stuff. There was always this kind of weird area of intrigue and mystery of like trying to learn stuff that they would never have asked. I fell into this trap when I was on the knowledge, where I would go and point one item of interest, Pall Mall, and I'm looking at the RAC club, but then I would find some other nondescript door and think, well, I'm here, I'm just going to jot down that one as well. And it just got really ridiculous in the end that, yeah, I ended the knowledge with 7,000 points of interest, but I don't know, 2,000 of those might have been just absolute crap that no examiner's ever going to ask, or no passenger is realistically going to ask, like 1 in a million kind of stuff. And above all, if you was on the knowledge for longer, you would end up with more points of interest. If I was studying for 10 years, well, that's 10 years to amass more and more points. Once I've learned all the basics, like Paddington Station, King's Cross, you just have to keep on adding and adding, because the more points that I know, the greater chance of success in an exam situation. So why is this being done? Why is it necessary? Well, I guess the overarching principle is the numbers of taxi drivers. Over the years, as I've explained on this channel, cab driver numbers in London are dropping. We are at the lowest we've ever been, with just over 15,000 drivers, from an all-time height of about 25,000. Now, this is very important because we need a lot of taxi drivers to create a reliable service. In the short term, having less taxi drivers is great for me because that's less competition. If there's someone waiting on the street for a cab, there's not like dozens of cabs driving past them, I'm the only cab, I'm going to get the money, right? I'm going to get the work. It's going to be busier for me. But long term, it makes the service less reliable. There's only going to be so long that someone's going to be waiting at a station in a queue of people if no taxis are turning up late at night, or if they're on the street in the cold and the rain. They're going to seek other alternatives. So you need to ensure there is a good flow and usage. But the Knowledge of London has a tricky scenario to play here. They can't just dumb it down entirely and make it so easy to get a cab, because our unique selling points as a London taxi, as purveyors of expert knowledge, is diminished if we no longer have to do the knowledge. The whole trust token, the whole reason why you would pay extra for a London cab, the reliability and standard of service across the whole fleet is completely lost. And at first glance, you might think, well, 6,000 points of interest, the knowledge must be dumbed down. This is dumbing down of the knowledge. But I think it's going to make better cab drivers in a way. In terms of keeping the right amount of cab drivers, we've had strategies in the past to balance these numbers out. The system of redlining was introduced when there was too many candidates on the knowledge. So redlining was this idea that if you failed too many exams in a row, you would be sent back to a preceding stage of the knowledge. And what this kind of did is it weeded out any chancers who might be on the knowledge. The friction of applying to become a London cab driver was very low. So there was a cohort of people that were studying the knowledge that were hoping that they could kind of get a few lucky questions and, you know, a year or two's time, they might end up with a green badge. So redlining was introduced as a way of kind of disincentivizing people that were trying to do it half-assed. Only the best candidates would then make it through. Now, redlining doesn't exist on the knowledge because it's no longer needed. There's not an abundance of students on the knowledge and you still have to work hard. If you fail multiple exams on the trot, you just stay on the same level that you are. And if you stay there for too long, TfL will just have a polite word with you and say, look, what's going on? Are you really in this or not? Like, we want to see you become a cab driver, but we're not seeing the results from you. There's no need to do the brutal thing of sending anyone back to preceding stages. And above all else, this whole 6,000 points thing is to make the whole system much more fairer and accountable. This also comes in with changes that mean that every appearance will be recorded. So if I, as a candidate, think, no, I'm pretty certain that was correct, I did that right there, and the examiner's actually given me a D for that, they reckon I've taken a wrong or an illegal route, then I'm allowed to go back and question it. You've always been able to do this and question the examiner's decision, but the issue was, it was always the candidate's word against the examiner's word. And I would argue in that kind of fight or flight, stress-like situation that as a candidate would be feeling in that scenario, that they're the one that's likely to have a less correct version of the objective reality within that examination. You know, having this system of having all the appearances recorded means that they could very easily go back and just go, look, you probably just panicked under the pressure, right? You called that road wrong and that's why the examiner gave you a D. I could very easily look at this points list and think, well, I had it the hard way on the knowledge. Lots of my colleagues and drivers before me had the hard knowledge. Why can't we just keep it this way? Well, I don't think there's any benefit to it. Yes, if you really want to become a cab driver, then you will work through that and you will be a better candidate for it because you're having to work through the hardness. But the issue is, I don't think it needs to be hard for the sake of being hard. You know, if I was to go back and do it again, I would bin off the idea of learning really, really obscure points of interest. Like, what's the point? If it's never been asked, the likelihood is so low, I'm wasting time on something that's never going to happen. I might as well control for the variables that are likely to come up. And this is pretty much what this 6,000 points is doing, is that it's saying, look, here is the curriculum, go out and learn all of this. They're not even giving you the answers. They're giving you the full list of points, and then it's up to you to decide what street is that point on, where is the door, and then even then you've still got to work out how am I going to leave the point. So there's still a lot of work involved. But what's different now is that the examiner cannot ask you a point that is not on that sheet. They can't make up these random sporadic points based upon what a customer might have told them last week and that no other customer is going to tell them again for another 10 years. It has to be on this list. And so far, all of the changes that TfL have implemented in the most recent years on the knowledge haven't made it easier, apart from technically the suburbs, because the suburban runs, there was about 180 runs. I think it's down to about 30-ish or something like that now. That technically does make it easier because there is less runs to learn. This doesn't make the process any easier because you still have to know how to get from point A to point B. There's 6,000 points here. If you times 6,000 by 6,000, you end up with about 36 million different combinations of routes between all of those points. Right, let's look at this list. Knowledge of London points list, edition 1, February 2025. I'm recording this on the 25th of February. This is publicly online, so you can go and have a look at this. I quite like the idea that this points list is out there from the start, because what got me into the knowledge of London was the idea that I just had to go out and learn the blue books. Like, the blue book runs are 320 runs that you would go out and learn and have an idea of London. That's what drew me into it, was that, oh look, it's just this list. If I learn these 320 runs, I become a cab driver. Not quite how it worked. There's further studying after that, quite a bit more actually. In this, there's a little preface in here saying that there is an addition. They regularly update this points list if they deem necessary. So this is edition 1. There's going to be a new one in May, a new one in August, new one in November, because London does change. It does evolve. There's new hotels. There might be new stations when, you know, various line extensions happen and stuff like that. They put it in here, and the caveat is, from when it's published, the candidate has 1 month to learn what that new point is. You know, in theory, like when I was on the knowledge, they would just ask a new point, and if you knew it, you knew it. If they didn't, they didn't. It could be brand new that day that you sat that examination, which is kind of unfair, because at the end of the day, when someone asks me something in the cab and I don't know it, well, I don't know it. I have to then ask the passenger for a little bit more information. I say, oh, well, whereabouts is that? What is that? And then you go from there. It basically is a giant index sorted by postcode. Now, already I like that, because that's going to give candidates a much better understanding of postcodes, which I would argue is very, very good knowledge. Like, when I studied, I would put the postcode on every single point. That kind of helped me cement the areas of London. It's when someone then says, like, Queen Caroline Street, my brain just goes, cool, W6 Hammersmith. And I think this, because they're separated into areas like that, will give a much better understanding of the differentiation between the areas of London. So interestingly, roads are also deemed as a point. There is some really, really good, and it's even actually got here, oh, look at that, the RNIB. Let me double check. I didn't have it as there, but yeah, I know it now. Yeah, that's interesting. That's the first one I've seen on this points list that stipulates it must be left on the left only. Obviously, because it's within a one-way system of Pentonville Road. There we go. Because of this curb here, it must be left on left only. Because of this entrance here, but this is an entrance, not an exit. So you go in that way and come out that way. So it's nice to know that it kind of clears up some of the ambiguity that would happen on an appearance, because there was always this discussions on the knowledge of like, Mr. Examiner has asked this point, are we allowed to leave it on the left? Can we turn it around? So that's kind of cool. We go right up to East Finchley, so McDonald's head offices, Hamburger University, that's still on there. But you'll notice that obviously some postcode areas are much heavier in points versus other areas. You know, N4, look, there's only about, what that looks like, about like 30 points there within N4, which is Finsbury Park kind of area. That's kind of all you need. Like, that's like an overview of that area. Like, why do I need to learn any more than what's on this list? Because all the big stuff's there, like Castle Climbing Centre, and all the stuff that are like points of interest, not just for where a passenger wants to go. Like, when they're telling you their address, what's near it? They might say, oh, I'm just after the John Scott Health Centre. Or I'm up on, you know, by the T-Bird cocktail bar, right on Blackstock Road, I think, isn't it? This is an interesting one. So Manor House Station, it's got in brackets plus taxi rank. That's quite an important stipulation, because if you was just dropping off Manor House Station or picking up Manor House Station, it's an underground station, so you can access it from loads of different areas. But it's got here plus taxi rank. So it's giving you real life scenarios if, I don't know about that one, because I don't know if anyone is ever ranked at Manor House Station. I mean, look at it. Like, that's the Manor House taxi rank, right? Which that cab's probably just parked there. But TfL are off duty to provide ranks at all these places. And that's like the Manor House. And then this is the station here. Because obviously when you leave certain ranks, there's only certain ways of leaving it. So you're straight onto the Seven Sisters Road. If they want to ask you from Manor House Station to go up to Seven Sisters, well, you then got to get a turnaround somewhere, obviously. So that's why you have to know how the taxi rank specifically works. And when they update this list, they'll highlight if it's a new point. So it's not a case of like, we've put like 1,000 new points in there, go find them. They're very transparent on, this is a new point, go and learn it. Because that's the point in the knowledge at the end of the day. You've got to go and learn this sort of stuff. Right, I'm going to test it as to what's featured in it. I'm going to put in some stuff that I've actually been asked by passengers recently. So I picked up a lady yesterday and she goes, right, Prince Albert Road, I want Northgate Apartments. Now, along Prince Albert Road, there's loads of apartments along there. And at one point, I probably did remember all the names of them. And she goes, do you know where it is? I'm like, yeah, I know Northgate. And I'm like, maybe I don't. But obviously, as you drive past, you can see them. You can chuck it into Google, whatever. So is Northgate Apartments on here? It is. Again, it doesn't tell you where it is. It's up to you as an honest student to go and find it, which is still good. I then dropped a gent up St Edmund's Terrace, so it's there. So it's still St John's Wood area. Yesterday, I was ranked on Sloane Square, and a lady was after West Elm, Tottenham Court Road. So I presume it's like a shop. But I'm like, Tottenham Court Road. Let's have a look. West Elm. So the shop's not on there, but presumably Tottenham Court Road will be. The Z Hotel on Tottenham Court Road. There's got to be some points on here that are on Tottenham Court Road, otherwise what's the point? Good Street Station, that's got to be on there. Yeah, Good Street and Good Street Station. Because that's quite important, because Tottenham Court Road is restricted within the day. So you need to know your way in and out of that as a knowledge student, taxi driver. What about Spearmint Rhino? Strip clubs. Spear. No. Is Spearmint Rhino still open? Don't know, but that's an important point, really, if it is. I dropped at Secrets the other night, so that's a strip club. There used to be loads of them all around London. There was one in Euston, there was one off the Kingsway. And the reason why I know them so well is that as cab drivers, you get a kickback for dropping passengers at a strip club. So let's see if Secrets is still there. Secrets W6, that's exactly the one I went to. And by the looks of it, it's the only one on this list. This one confused me when I first got out. Chelsea Burger. No. If you don't know it, Chelsea Burger is like a little burger van that's on the south side of Chelsea Bridge, right? Just at the start of like Queenstown Road. You will get Middle Eastern customers like in the height of the summer who are like, Chelsea Burger. And I'm like, Chelsea Burger? But not on there for whatever reason. You got Hamburger University, Burger and Lobster, Bond Street, Leicester Square, Mayfair, Oxford Circus, Soho. Now, I actually had an appearance. I won't name the examiner, but the examiner goes to me, Burger and Lobster. Now, back in the day, I didn't realise you could actually ask the examiner a question and say, which Burger and Lobster are you referring to, sir? I just knew there was one on Mayfair, Clarges Street. So I just said Clarges Street, and the examiner just went, nope, let's move on. Clearly, there is one there, Burger and Lobster, Mayfair. All right, here's another one. I recently went to Electric Shuffle, Electric Ballroom, Electric Brixton, Electric Cinema, not on there. But there is lots of those kind of game type things on there. Swingers, that used to be a point, didn't it? Swingers ain't on there. Flight Club, because you get like people on Saturdays who are like, all right guys, take me to Flight Club. Yeah, Flight Club Shoreditch, Flight Club Victoria, Bloomsbury. Fish and chips. What about fish and chip shops? Poppies, right? Poppies used to be a point and it's still on there. 3 of them. NW1, so that's Camden. E1, that's going to be Shoreditch, Hanbury Street maybe. And Soho, which we went to in my chip video, the Old Compton Street. Mayfair Chippy's got to be. A lot of people ask for the Mayfair Chippy. But there's only one on there. There's now a new one that's opened up in Knightsbridge. So maybe we'll see the other Mayfair Chippy get added to the future points list. What about one that all the American punters ask? Gymkhana. This isn't... Hey, Gymkhana. Of course Gymkhana's on there. So it's pretty comprehensive, I would say. Like, this is stuff that I get asked. Even if I don't know it, if someone says like, oh, driver, can you take me to... And I go, oh, where is that off of? They then tell you the street, and then more than likely the street will be on here. There's limitations, right? There's going to be new stuff all the time. And something that then happens on stage 4 onwards is that they've actually put in curiosity points. Now, I love this. So stage 4 onwards is 28s. So it's like the kind of middle part of your appearance journey, really. It's when your knowledge gets a bit better. So they're going to be asking you more obscure stuff. So curiosity points. Things like the Beatles Zebra Crossing, with a little bit of a bio about it. I don't know if you're expected to learn the bio. Did they preface that in the beginning? Candidates may be asked points on the list of curiosity points noted in this document. This list contains some unusual historic places which are useful to cabbies to know. So, no, from what I can gather, they don't. But obviously, just a little blurb there does help. The Diana Memorial Playground, yeah, definitely. I've dropped people there before. Bullring Gate, yeah, you have to know that because Chelsea Flower Show, people will be asked specifically which entrance they want. Eleanor Cross, no one's ever asked me for it, but you drive past it and people say, oh, driver, what's this thing here? So I think it's kind of cool that they've put in something like that no one's ever going to ask to go there, but you have an idea of like the context of it. Haringey Ladder, yeah, that's another important one because you can learn all the streets on the Haringey Ladder, and it says it here, like a series of roads, Dunfermline Road, Sydney Road, M4, which resembles a ladder on a map. But locals in that area will know it as the Haringey Ladder. So some people would say, like, don't use the Haringey Ladder or don't go that way. The Iron Lung. These Parisian-style toilets are popular with taxi drivers. And Tom, the taxi driver. Yeah, Little Portugal. I've never really referred to it as that. I know of it. Nelson's Column. I mean, come on, like, who doesn't know Nelson's Column? Policeman's Coat Hook. No one's asked for it, but it is a cool bit of trivia as you drive past it. Same with, like, Postman's Park. St Bride Street, there's some good stuff in there, but is it really essential? I don't know. I mean, you can learn all this stuff later on, like if you want to go down the guiding route as a cab driver, which many drivers like myself we do, of course. Okay, so then you have stage 5 stuff, which is points outside the 6 mile radius. So this is 21, so this is the final point on the knowledge, and this covers stuff that you will go to through one area or the other. So XL London, because it's just outside of the knowledge area, like there's no point wasting time picking up other points of interest there, it's just got that. So how do you get out to the XL London? Wimbledon, obviously, so All England Lawn and Tennis Club, because more than likely you'll have to go drop someone off there. Alexandra Palace when the darts are on. I'd be quite interested to know like how they put new points of interest in, because the majority of examiners are like full-time examiners as far as I'm aware. So when are they going to be out and about to get the input of these new points? Yes, they can be up to date with like using things like Time Out magazine and stuff like that, but ultimately it's going to be the cab drivers because they're the ones who hear it first, because they're the ones that are on the ground and punters are asking people to go to these places. Lightroom at King's Cross, is Lightroom on there? That was only like a newish, yeah it is. You know, as this stuff kind of gets developed and comes out, who's going to be submitting that information? So I've got to try and look at this like objectively. What are the benefits of having a finite list of points? What are the negatives? I think candidates are going to understand areas better because they're obviously organised by postcode for starters. Your concentration is going to be on those points of interest rather than trying to find more points of interest. It's the whole idea of quality over quantity. What is the point, and this goes for a lot of things in life, what is the point in just kind of exploring loads of new stuff when you know this is the crux of it all, and just get the crux of it all really strong and in your noggin? It's going to be a lot more encouraging to get the knowledge done, because the end is in sight. Like, you know, you've only got to learn these 6,000 points. And yes, there might be some updates. I don't know how many streets or points of interest will change on the updates, whether it's going to be 100 or 1,000. But more than likely, as a lot of these points were on my knowledge, I reckon it's only going to be within the hundreds, if hundreds, than the thousands that are going to be updated. So you know that as you're going through it, right, I've got my 5,000 points, 6,000 points. And then even once you get to 6,000 points, you're still going to be revising these to make sure that they are really solid in your head. Anything you ever want to do in life, if you want to get in good shape or if you want to build a financial plan, you've got to know your numbers. How many times a week are you going to be going to the gym? How long is your gym plan going to be for? How many calories can I eat in a day, right? These are all parameters that you set for yourself that you then work towards. If the goalposts change, then you'd be so demotivated. Could you imagine running the London Marathon, and as you get towards the end and you can see it and you know that it finishes on the Mall, they go, you know what, we're going to just move the finish line a little bit just because we can. And that's kind of like what they could do on the knowledge beforehand. You could be at the very end of getting your badge. You could have 11 examinations where you pass with flying colours, but the last examination, they'll go, you know what, we're just going to ask a load of nondescript points that don't exist from the middle of nowhere. Obviously, they do have to exist, but it was like an unaccountable system. So this will be much more motivating. And I think as well, it would be really nice to experience this in an exam situation where if you've learned all 6,000 points of interest and the examiner says, take me from Barry's Boot Camp Central. And you go, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't know Barry's Boot Camp. Well, in theory, you should know it because you've been told of it. There's 6,000 points of interest that you know and you've learned. So it's actually a limitation of your own knowledge. Your own brain has forgotten it. Like, that would be really reassuring to know. My very, very last appearance before becoming a cab driver, Mr. Swire, he asked me, I can't remember what, I think it might have been Nelson Square. And he goes, where's Nelson Square? And I'm like, I don't, it was like the last question. And I was like, oh, I don't really know, sir. And he looks back at me and he's like, you know Nelson Square. And I did know it, but it was just this weird kind of block I had on myself, because a lot of it was this mystique of like Mr. Swire, he's like the points master. Maybe he just pulled some random square from somewhere. Well, Nelson Square was just off of Union Street, the cut, right near TfL head office. I probably would have walked, I think I did walk past that square before that appearance that day. I knew it, I firmly knew it. But because I had this perception of Mr. Swire, like a bit of a boogeyman, like he could ask you anything, my brain was kind of telling me like, oh, you don't really know this, when I did. And now, because of this list, there isn't going to be a boogeyman on the knowledge in terms of them asking you really outrageous stuff. It's now a test of what you actually know. The negatives of this 6,000 points, my first thing is that it kind of removes a level of intrigue from the knowledge of knowing that they could ask you anywhere. But why was that a problem anyway? Anyone can come up to my window and ask me anywhere. They can be really pedantic about it. And sometimes passengers are pedantic about it. They'll give you a little cul-de-sac and assume that you have to know it because you're a London cab driver. So that's partially that reputation that's been built up that was wrong anyway. That's not even a viable reason. And the only other negative is the public perception of it. I'm just worried that the media will get hold of this and go, oh, cab drivers used to learn 25,000 streets. Now they only learn 6,000 streets, because the first one was false anyway. So it's this heightened perception that London cabbies have to know everywhere. When we get studied, like that's an impossible task. Like, you can't know everywhere. The whole thing with the old system was that in theory, the examiner could ask you anywhere, right? So you could say that you could potentially be asked anything. But when is that really conducive to being a cab driver? Why would you need to know a random cul-de-sac down in deepest, darkest Wandsworth for no apparent reason? This is actual knowledge, and this will encourage people to go more intricate and more familiar with this list of points, rather than chasing red herrings of points that were asked once or twice that they might ask it on a random occasion. So I think this is good. And ultimately, the reason why I'm making this video, the reason why I make all these videos on YouTube, is to get more people in taxis, both drivers and passengers. And that is achieving that. It doesn't make the knowledge any easier, because you still have to go out and learn all these things. So it's still a mammoth task. What it does do is it removes that unknown bit of the knowledge. Like, what if they ask me something that's never been asked before? Which is never really right anyway. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn a little bit more about how the knowledge is actually tested, I made a video where I, as a working cab driver, redid the very first examination that I would have had to do to get my badge. Yep, it's called the map test, and I'll leave that on screen here so you can get a bit more of an insight of how our knowledge is actually tested. It's a good one.